Hey everybody, today's May 12th, and today we're going to talk about the price of Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about why Bitcoin keeps going sideways and doesn't seem to be moving up or down significantly in any direction. Why does Bitcoin keep moving sideways, and why is it trapped within this Fibonacci channel? Now, before we begin this discussion, please read this disclaimer, and you can pause this video as you read it. So in previous videos, I talked about how Bitcoin, after it makes a big move, it likes to consolidate, right? It likes to go sideways for a while, right? And since we've had this incredible breakout since around October, we've basically seen an incredible nearly 500% move in Bitcoin, right? And so I think that what we're seeing right now, and I talked about this in previous videos, is I think we're seeing a period where Bitcoin is undergoing a reaccumulation period, which means that it's basically consolidating, going sideways, right? It's trying to decide whether it has the strength to go up or down. And this is really a period where I think the smart money is starting to take some supply off the market. So every time it comes down, we seem to have strong support of buyers coming in, right? And taking some supply off. And eventually the demand will outstrip supply, and we should probably see the price go up a lot higher, or that is just my own opinion, right? And the reason why is that if you just look at the history of Bitcoin, it tends to follow similar patterns, right? Like, just going all the way back to 2012, we can see that when we have these impulse moves up in a correction, then it goes sideways. Very boring, right? These are our reaccumulation periods. Same thing over here as well. And of course, we had our bear market, which led into this accumulation period, which is the bottom of the bear market in 2015. And that lasted for about a year. Then we had an impulse move up. In 2016, we had a reaccumulation period where Bitcoin was very boring, just went sideways for a couple months. Same thing in late 2016 over here. And of course, we knew what happened after we had this breakout in 2017, right? This epic rally, this epic bull market. And after we had this blow-off top leading into a bear market, we also had periods where Bitcoin just went sideways, right? And just most recently in 2020, 2019, 2020, right? About a year of consolidation. And now we have this breakout. So I think right now we're seeing something that's very historically similar to what we've seen in the past, which is that Bitcoin is just taking some time to consolidate right now. And this could, in retrospect, end up being a good time to perhaps buy or add to your position, reaccumulation period. We talked about this in a previous video, which you can see if you search for on my playlist for Bitcoin analysis videos. So right now we're just going sideways as buyers and bulls and bears sort of like fight each other. But I think that if you look at the technicals, right, it does seem like we are more bullishly inclined, right? We are making, even though it's not perfect, like higher lows and higher highs. This is very, very slightly. And I think that another reason why Bitcoin has been having trouble breaking out is that ever since more institutions have been adopting Bitcoin, which ultimately is a good thing, right? It's a good thing for the price of Bitcoin because we want to see more people coming in and accepting Bitcoin into like businesses and want to see institutions like hedge funds buying Bitcoin because it just sort of like validates Bitcoin as not just this niche product, but really just worldwide currency that is accepted and validated within big businesses and big institutions, like legacy institutions, not just like the small scale, small community, right? And that's going to allow more money to come into the space and grow Bitcoin. So yeah, and that's ultimately going to push the price of Bitcoin a lot higher, right? But one of those unintended consequences is that a lot of times these institutions will treat Bitcoin as just another risk-on asset, right? And this is what I've been talking about. Like, people have been fighting about whether or not Bitcoin is correlated with the stock market or not. And I talked about this in a previous video, and I said that yes, I do think that as we see more institutions adopt Bitcoin, especially adding it to either their balance sheets or to their portfolio, like hedge funds, I do think that they're going to treat Bitcoin just like a growth stock, like a tech stock, right? A risk-on asset. And we've seen that a very strong correlation whenever the tech stocks sell off. This is NASDAQ, right? We've seen Bitcoin also find some difficulty. Right now, it's not as bad because if you see like it's very strong correlation, right? The tech stock, the NASDAQ, and Bitcoin just basically going sideways, and very similar corrections on the same days that the NASDAQ came down. As you can see, the dollar coming up also putting pressure, and the yields coming up also putting pressure on Bitcoin, right? Because people are treating Bitcoin as a risk-on asset, just like any tech stock, right? So I think that's another reason why Bitcoin has sort of hit this price ceiling where it's having a hard time breaking above, right? So with the stock market coming down over these past couple sessions, right, we've had a fairly large correction over the last 3 days. That's also putting some downward pressure on Bitcoin, despite a somewhat promising surge in the price of Bitcoin over the weekend. People were hoping, like myself, were hoping that Bitcoin could go up a lot higher, close in on this Fibonacci resistance level and perhaps push up higher. But of course, with the stock market coming down, and with more institutions treating Bitcoin like a tech stock, a risk-on asset, we're starting to find a ceiling again. But again, this is not necessarily a bad thing because Bitcoin going sideways, right? It just creates more energy, like a spring. Like I've said this many times, that when Bitcoin goes sideways, and especially when it starts to get boring, right? This could be a setup for a big push higher. And we talked about this in my previous video. I want to talk about it again, how Ether or Ethereum tends to predict the movement of Bitcoin, right? For example, last summer when Bitcoin consolidated for about 3 months over here, and we had a breakout near the end of this month of July, right? But if you look at the price of Ether basically broke out first, and then Bitcoin followed, right? And right now, if you look at the price of Ether has managed to not only break out of this consolidation area, but it's going to new all-time highs. So I do think that this is foreshadowing a potential breakout to the upside of Bitcoin's very soon, right? Because Bitcoin, even though it's been going sideways, it still hasn't been able to break new all-time highs, right? We talked about how these Fibonacci resistance, these channels, they tend to act as strong support and resistance level, right? We found strong support here and here, but we also found strong resistance here, here, and probably will find strong resistance as we get closer. We also talked about moving averages, right? Throughout this whole bull run higher, that when we had this breakout from October, the price of Bitcoin stayed above the silver line, which is our short-term moving average, the 50-day simple moving average. And when it came down for our first major correction in January, we found support here. Not only on that, but also on this Fibonacci level, right? So two confluences of indicators, or confluence of two indicators coming together to find support. We also found support over here when we came down and touched this moving average. And we broke the support here, flipped it into resistance, which is why we're having such a hard time breaking above, right? On a technical level, because we failed to hold support for the first time in like 6 months. And so that's another reason why I think Bitcoin is going sideways, because if you look, and I'll turn this into a line chart, but you see the silver line here, this is our 50-day moving average. You can see the price of Bitcoin has basically been moving sideways along this line, right? And that's another reason, is that Bitcoin is struggling to flip this, which was once support, is now resistance. So it's having a hard time breaking above, and Bitcoin is trying to flip this resistance, this line of resistance, into support, like we did over the last 6 months, right? But once we find support above, I do think this will act as support again and should allow us to continue higher, right? Now, something that I talked about is that these two lines, when they cross, or the line of the moving averages and the Fibonacci support level, when they cross, they tend to act as strong support. So eventually this line was going to come up and touch this line, right? And I think that if the price comes close to it, it'll act as strong support as well. So we could see the price of Bitcoin go sideways for a while now. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because we talked about how, again, just to summarize, this could be setting up for an explosive move higher, right? So these periods where Bitcoin is boring, where it seems to be resting, seems to be doing nothing, these are periods where you want to pay attention, because when Bitcoin is like, when nobody's paying attention to Bitcoin and all the action is somewhere else, like in Dogecoin or Ether, Bitcoin will make its big move when people least expect it, and you want to be ready, you want to be prepared, right? I talked about how I've been buying Bitcoin and other altcoins when Bitcoin has went below 50,000, and not that you should copy my trades or anything, right? This is just entertainment. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but all I'm saying is that when nobody is paying attention to Bitcoin, right? When we're starting to see the fear and greed index come down, right? That's when you want to start being careful and paying attention, because the breakout can happen when you least expect it, and you want to be prepared, right? And I guarantee you, there's a lot of people trying to short this market right now, and when the price explodes higher, they're going to get short squeezed, and that's going to just give more fuel to push up higher. Not to mention that the fear and greed index, right, is nowhere near overbought right now. There's so much room for us to go up higher, right? So having the price go sideways, it not only is it taking supply off the market? It's also resetting these oscillators, whether it's fear greed, whether it's the MACD or the RSI. And look at the MACD right now, just very quickly, getting into positive territory right now. But we want to hold this and push up higher, right? Of course, we've been in a downtrend while the price of Bitcoin has been going up. Same thing with the RSI, right? Been in a downtrend while the price of Bitcoin continues to go higher. And that is bearish divergence, but we want to break that. We want to see the oscillators come up higher, and we want to see the fear and greed index go up higher as well with the price of Bitcoin. And we want to see strong volume. And by that time, I do think that we'll have finally the strength to break out of this channel that we've been in for the last few months, right? And I think that's going to take us to our next resistance level around $80,000. But for the in the meantime, we seem to continue going sideways, and we could probably go sideways for a while. But I think that near the end of this month, like we saw in summer of 2020, right? Spring to summer, May, June, July. This is a 3-month consolidation period with Ethereum breaking out and perhaps predicting a move in the price of Bitcoin, right? Ethereum breaking out right now to new all-time highs. I do think that Bitcoin may soon, after maybe a couple more days or weeks of consolidating, break out higher. So that's just what I'm predicting. Of course, always do your own research and make your trades based on your own research. I'll definitely update you and do a follow-up based on how the price action develops going into the remainder of the week and into next week. Hopefully we at least hold this 50-day simple moving average, right? We're having a hard time holding this as support because we flipped it from resistance to support when we broke below. But I do have faith that Bitcoin will eventually continue up higher, right? Especially if the stock market ends up recovering, right? But right now the stock market seems like it's coming down pretty hard. But yeah, we'll definitely update you as the price develops into the future. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, useful, informative, please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe for updates. I appreciate your support. Thank you again, and have a great day.